Elara Bennett lived a life that blended in with the busy streets of the city. She worked as a translator for the United Earth Council when she was 28. This job kept her busy but didn't always put her in the spotlight. That was how she liked it. She liked to spend quiet mornings with coffee, evenings with old books, and weekends in her small apartment with a view of the harbor. Her daily routine was boring, predictable, and comfortable. Elara, on the other hand, had a secret that made her anything but normal. The same dream had come to her every night since she was 7. Not every night, but often enough that she remembered every detail with such clarity that she started to wonder if it was really just a dream. She was in a huge hall made of crystals that looked like they were breathing light. The walls changed colors in ways she couldn't name, shades that didn't exist in real life. The air was full of energy that made her skin tingle, and shadows moved at the edges of her vision like living things that were just out of her reach. But he was the main thing in the dream that made her wake up with her heart racing and tears streaming down her face. He was a huge man with deep bronze skin and intricate silver patterns that flowed from his temples down to his strong jawline like rivers of moonlight frozen in time. His eyes were bright amber and almost glowed with an inner fire. They were so intense that they made her feel both scared and strangely safe at the same time. His armor looked like it was alive, moving like liquid metal across his broad shoulders and chest. It caught light that shouldn't have been there and reflected it in strange ways. He walked like someone who ruled over worlds, someone whose very presence demanded respect and obedience. He didn't talk in the dream. She felt a strong feeling wash over her as he stared at her with those burning amber eyes. It was as if he were looking for something in her soul or reminding her of something she had forgotten a long time ago. When he reached for her, she would feel such longing and recognition that she would wake up crying without knowing why. Sometimes, though, his face would harden with what looked like regret or sadness, and she'd feel a pain in her chest that lasted for hours after she woke up. The dreams were strongest when she was a child. Her parents took her to therapists, who said she might have anxiety or an overactive imagination because she read too much science fiction. Her father, who loved space operas and stories about aliens, had felt bad and wondered if the things he watched had hurt his daughter. But Elara knew, even as a kid, that this wasn't something that came from the outside. This came from a place inside her that she couldn't explain. The dreams happened less often as she got older. They came maybe once a month when she was a teenager. Maybe once every few months in her 20s. Elara had convinced herself that they were going away and that whatever mystery from her childhood had made them was naturally coming to an end. She threw herself into her language studies and found that she had a strange talent for learning foreign languages. The strange phonetics and complicated grammatical structures made sense to her in ways that they didn't for other students. That talent got her a job with the Diplomatic Translation Corps of the United Earth Council. She had been working on written translations, communication protocols, and cultural briefings for 3 years. She never thought she'd get a call for something like this. Up until now. "Elara, you're in charge of the main hall," her boss, Director Harrison, said at the morning meeting. He was usually calm, but now he was barely able to contain his excitement and nerves. The Thravian delegation asked for human translators who can handle complex diplomatic situations. Your scores for Thravian language proficiency were the best we've ever seen. This is your time. Elara's heart skipped a beat and then started to race. The Galactic Peace Summit had been in the works for 2 years. It was the first official meeting between Earth and 5 alien civilizations. It had only been 15 years since humans had met aliens, and the relationship had not been easy. Border fights happened because of misunderstandings. Cultural differences had led to events that almost led to war. Earth had come within hours of a full-scale invasion 3 times in the last 10 years. The only thing that stopped it was last-minute talks and the fear of mutually assured destruction. The summit was the best. It was humanity's chance to make peace last, to show that Earth deserved a place at the galactic table, and to show that humans could be partners instead of problems. There was a lot of pressure. At best, failure could mean being alone. At worst, it could mean death. "Who are the Thravians?" Elara asked, trying to keep her voice steady even though her hands were shaking a little. She held them together to hide the shaking. "Yes. In this part of the galaxy, they have one of the strongest military forces. Some people say they are the strongest." Harrison leaned forward and looked serious. "General Kale is personally leading the delegation. People think he's a legend. He has never lost a battle, is a brilliant strategist, and seems to have very strong opinions about people. Elara, this has to go perfectly. The Thravians could be our best friends or our worst enemies." Harrison stopped and looked at her face. "Are you okay? You look very pale. I know this is a lot of stress, but it's also a great chance. These are the kinds of moments that matter for your career and the future of the Earth. I'm fine, Elara lied as she picked up her things with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Just nervous. I won't let you down. I know you won't. You're the best we have. Harrison gave her shoulder a quick squeeze. Don't forget what you learned. Stay calm, stay on target, and trust your gut. Don't worry, you've got this. Elara tried to calm her racing thoughts and the strange anxiety building in her chest as she walked through the huge Geneva Summit building. Over the past month, she had learned a lot about Thravian culture, including their complicated honor codes, military traditions, and language that changed meaning depending on tone and context. She knew how they lived, understood how they thought, and could get around their complicated social hierarchies. But something didn't seem right. She felt a tingling down her spine, as if her body knew there was a threat that her mind couldn't name. Even though the building was warm, her hands felt cold. Her stomach twisted with worry that didn't feel like normal nerves. This felt like looking forward to something. Like something inside her was getting ready for a moment it had been waiting for. The main hall was amazing. It was a round room 3 stories high with a domed ceiling that showed real-time images of Earth from space. The planet slowly spun above us, reminding us of what was at stake. Representatives from different worlds would sit around a huge round table made of polished stone from each planet that took part. This would show that everyone was equal and working toward the same goal. The buildings combined human and alien styles in ways that were both pretty and a little creepy. Elara sat down in the translator's booth, which was a small room with clear walls that let her see everything that was going on while still keeping her a little bit apart. She made sure her earpiece was working, tested her microphone, and looked over her notes one last time. Other translators were getting ready for their delegations around her. You could feel the tension. There were security guards from different species along the walls. Their weapons were strong enough to stop threats but looked more like ceremonial weapons than weapons that could hurt someone. Cameras floated on platforms that didn't have any gravity, getting shots from every angle for the billions of people watching from many planets and stations. The Zalthirian Collective had already sent people, and their crystal-like bodies were bending light in amazing ways. The Morphean delegates, who could change shape and had chosen to look like people for the summit, talked quietly to each other. The human delegation, which was led by Secretary General Chin, looked professional but on edge. They were responsible for the future of the Earth. Then the announcement came through the chamber's speakers, which translated the words into dozens of languages at the same time. The Thravian delegation has arrived. Everyone stopped talking. Everyone looked at the huge doors at the entrance to the hall. Even the floating cameras turned to look at the door. Elara's breath caught in her throat. She could feel her heart racing so fast that she thought other people could hear it. The strange tingling along her spine got worse and spread across her skin like electricity. The huge doors opened slowly like they were part of a ceremony, and her childhood nightmare came into the room. When the Thravian delegation walked in, the tension in the room was almost physical. The air felt heavier, as if it was full of the weight of their presence. 6 figures moved in perfect sync, their steps making a rhythm that was so precise it sounded like a military march. They wore dark red robes over armor that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. This made them look darker than the shadows around them, as if they had their own gravity. Elara, on the other hand, only saw one. He walked in the middle of the group, taller than the others by at least a head. His posture gave off an air of complete authority that didn't need to be announced or introduced. General Kale of Thravia was the Thravian Empire's highest-ranking military officer and the warrior who had won 14 planetary campaigns without losing a single one. His reputation came before him like thunder before lightning. A brilliant strategist who thought 10 moves ahead, a merciless warrior who showed no weakness, and a diplomat who was impossible to read or control. Earth's intelligence reports had said he was dangerous, unpredictable, and possibly the biggest threat to humanity. They had said that his support could keep Earth safe for generations, but his opposition could mean an invasion right away. Winning his respect, earning his trust, and convincing him that humanity deserved to live were all important. Elara's world tilted on its axis as he stepped fully into the light of the Great Hall. The silver lines, flowing from his temples in complicated patterns that looked both natural and geometric at the same time, down his high cheekbones like war paint applied by the gods themselves, tracing his strong jaw with a precision that showed his heritage and rank. The skin was a deep bronze color that looked like it was glowing from within. The amber eyes that held the light of the fire and the wisdom of the ages. The royal way she carried herself made everyone else in the room, both human and alien, feel small and unimportant. It was him. The exact number from her dreams. Not the same. Not like that. Not close. The same. Every little thing was exactly right. The angle of the silver markings, the color of his eyes, the way he held his shoulders, and even the little scar above his left eyebrow that she had never consciously remembered but recognized right away. Elara's tablet fell from her numb fingers and hit the floor of her booth with a loud bang. The sound was so loud in the quiet room that it sounded like glass breaking in a church. A few people turned to look at her, and other translators gave her worried or annoyed looks. She saw Director Harrison look at her with worry. But she couldn't move, breathe, or understand what she was seeing. This couldn't happen. Dreams didn't come true. At galactic peace summits, childhood nightmares didn't walk through doors wearing real armor and representing real civilizations. The mind didn't know the future in such great detail. But there he was, as real as her heart beating, as solid as the floor under her feet, and as undeniable as gravity. She tried to make sense of it with her scientific mind. By chance. Her brain making sense of random facts by putting them into patterns it knows. False memory. Maybe she had seen pictures of Thravians while studying and then put them into her childhood memories. But she knew those reasons weren't true. The dreams had been too real, too consistent, and too specific. General Kale walked toward the Thravian position at the round table, with his officers perfectly lined up on either side of him. His face stayed calm and professional, like a carefully made mask for a military leader who was representing his whole civilization to possible enemies and allies who weren't sure what to do. He moved in a controlled, planned way that didn't give anything away. Then he looked around the room as if he were doing a routine check of his surroundings. Everything stopped when those amber eyes met hers. Elara felt the effect like a physical force, like being hit by lightning and being wrapped in warmth at the same time. Time seemed to slow down, with every second feeling like it lasted forever. The quiet conversations, the hum of technology, and the rustle of robes and armor all faded away. Kale's step faltered. For just a split second she saw it, but it was hard to see. For a heartbeat, his perfectly controlled military posture broke down. His eyes opened almost imperceptibly, and something raw and unguarded flashed across his face. She thought that this was something that didn't happen very often on the great General Kale's face. What a surprise. Surprise. Acknowledgement. And there was something else underneath it all. Something that looked like relief or the end of a long wait, or something that was done. The moment lasted an impossible amount of time, going against the laws of time and space. Everyone else in the room, the other delegates, the cameras, and the billions of people watching from across the stars, seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, locked in a gaze that crossed impossible distances and made no sense. Elara's mind screamed that this couldn't be happening, but her body remembered everything. The feeling from her dreams hit her with devastating clarity. A strange mix of fear and safety, of being seen by someone who understood something deep about her, and of being in a moment she'd been waiting for without knowing why. She knew him from her soul. That was the only way to put it. Some part of her that was below language, consciousness, and rational thought knew this being. Had always known him. Kale's hand, which had been moving toward his seat in a practiced way of being diplomatic, stopped in the middle of the motion. His amber eyes looked at her with such intensity that it made her skin tingle and her breath catch. She saw his jaw tighten and the muscles in his neck tense. He took a slow, controlled breath that made his chest rise. This is the kind of breath someone takes when they are trying to deal with unexpected feelings. One of his officers leaned in and said something in fast Thravian. Kale didn't say anything in response or even acknowledge what was said. He kept staring at Elara, as if looking away would make her disappear or prove she was just another dream. Elara knew she was shaking. Her hands were so tightly wrapped around the edge of her translator's booth that her knuckles had turned white. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. She should turn away, break this impossible moment, and remember where she was and what was at stake. This was the most important diplomatic event in all of human history, and she was looking at an alien general like what? Like she knew him? Like he was the most important thing in the room? She couldn't stop looking though. It couldn't be done physically. Those amber eyes held her like chains and she didn't want to get away. In that moment, something passed between them, some kind of wordless communication that went beyond language and species. A question was asked and answered. A mutual acknowledgement. He felt the same way she did. She could see it in the way his breathing had changed, the slight tension around his eyes, and the way his body leaned toward her as if it were being pulled by invisible strings. "General?" One of his men spoke louder, his voice full of worry. The sound broke through the bubble that had surrounded them. Kale blinked and the mask slammed back down. His face went back to being neutral and professional. But Elara could see how hard he was trying. She could see how his hands made quick fists before relaxing. He slowly turned to his seat and sat down with the other delegates at the table. But even though he was sitting there and paying attention to Secretary General Chen's opening remarks, he kept looking back at her. Quick looks that lasted only a few seconds but felt like years. Every time their eyes met, Elara felt that shock of recognition, that feeling of knowing them too well. She jumped when Director Harrison's voice crackled in her ear. "Elara, you need to start translating." No. She was horrified to find out that she had missed the first few minutes of the proceedings. She had completely forgotten about her job, which was the most important thing she had ever done in her career, while she stared at an alien general like a starstruck fool. She felt ashamed as she struggled to catch up, her fingers shaking as she opened the translation protocols. But even though she made herself concentrate and started translating the formal diplomatic language into exact Thravian, part of her mind was still somewhere else. On amber eyes that looked at too much. On silver marks that had been haunting her dreams for 20 years. About the fact that her childhood nightmare had just come true in a way that was terrifying and undeniable. And on top of that, it seemed like he knew her too, which was even more impossible. Even though Elara was the one translating, the summit proceedings went on around her like a play in a language she could barely understand. Her voice worked on its own, years of training taking over while her conscious mind went through impossible situations and questions that had no answers. Oh. The word rang in her head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. How could she have dreamed of someone she had never met? How had she seen his face perfectly years before she met his kind? How could any of this happen in a universe that is governed by logic and physics? Secretary General Chen was talking about trade agreements and borders between countries. He was careful not to sound weak or aggressive. Elara translated mechanically, and her Thravian pronunciation was perfect even though her hands were shaking. General Kale sat up straight and listened to the translations with a face that looked like it was made of stone. He seemed completely focused on the diplomatic talk, and every once in a while he would nod or write something down on the holographic display in front of him. He looked like a professional soldier to anyone who saw him. But Elara noticed the cracks. She saw how his fingers tapped out an uneven rhythm on the edge of the table. There was a break in the pattern when Chen talked about human cultural values. When the Zaltherian representative talked about prophetic visions and spiritual connections between species, she could tell that his breathing changed and got a little deeper. She saw the muscle in his jaw jump when one of his own officers asked a direct question about how well humans can defend themselves. His eyes flicked to her for a second before going back to the speaker. He was just as shaken as she was. He was just better at keeping it a secret. The thought made her shiver. General Kale, a famous warrior and undefeated commander who had conquered 14 worlds with his military genius, was having a hard time keeping his cool because of her. Because he knew her just like she knew him. That meant this wasn't just crazy on one side. This wasn't her imagination playing tricks on her or false memories making patterns out of thin air. There was something that connected them, something that made it impossible for them to be together. Elara ran to the bathroom during a short break, her legs barely holding her up. She looked at herself in the mirror while splashing cold water on her face. She saw the same ordinary things she'd seen every day of her life. Light brown hair pulled back into a useful bun, gray eyes that her mother had always called thoughtful, and pale skin that never quite tanned right. Not much. There was nothing that explained why an alien general would look at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. "Get it together," she said to herself in the mirror. "This is the future of Earth at stake. This can wait whatever it is." But could it? She held onto the edge of the sink as another wave of recognition hit her, a memory that seemed to belong to someone else. The figure in her dreams had always seemed to be waiting for something. For a person. His face showed such longing and patient hope. Was he waiting for her? That thought was crazy. Totally crazy. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. When she got back to her booth, the delegates were getting back together. General Kale came in through a different door with his security detail on either side of him. He stopped for a second as he walked by her station, so briefly that anyone who wasn't paying attention would have missed it. She saw questions in his amber eyes when they met. Confusion. Wonder. And something else that made her breath catch. A desperate kind of hope, like a person lost in the dark seeing the first light of dawn. Then he moved on and sat down like nothing had happened. The session in the afternoon was even harder. The talks turned to military cooperation and mutual defense pacts, which needed very careful translation. Any mistake could be seen as a threat or an insult. Elara had to use every bit of willpower she had to stay focused. But she noticed something strange. General Kale's posture changed slightly every time she translated and her voice spoke the Thravian words that carried Earth's proposals and responses. His shoulders slowly relaxed, but only someone who was really paying attention would have noticed. He took deeper breaths. The harsh lines around his eyes got a little softer. He was listening to her voice like someone listens to a song they love that they thought they'd never hear again. It wasn't just a visual recognition. He recognized her voice. Elara was hit by the implications like a tidal wave. If he knew her voice, it meant that their relationship was more than just looks. Did he also dream about her? Did he hear her voice in his sleep, saying things he couldn't understand but that made him feel better? It was too perfect for the symmetry to be a coincidence. There was a tense moment late in the afternoon. The Morphean delegate questioned Thravian military expansion near disputed areas, and his accusation was barely hidden. As General Kale stood up, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. His impressive height drew everyone's attention right away. He said in his native language, "The Thravian Empire does not grow through conquest." His voice was deep and strong. "We keep the peace in areas that would otherwise fall into chaos and protect our allies. We can talk about Morpheus territorial issues through the right diplomatic channels instead of making public accusations." Elara translated what he said, trying to keep her voice steady and professional even though his tone made her chest vibrate. Kale spoke the Thravian language perfectly, with the musical tonal changes that made it so complex. But as she finished translating, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. Kale had used a certain way of writing that suggested personal honor instead of political posturing. It was a subtle change that most translators would miss or make easier. But Elara got it and translated it correctly into English. Kale's eyes went straight to her. For a brief moment, his professional mask fell away, and he looked completely shocked. That little detail shouldn't have been caught by any human translator. It took a deep understanding of Thravian culture and the military hierarchy. But she had caught it. In ways that went beyond normal learning, she somehow understood him. The time had come. The Morphean delegate backed down, and the conversation moved on to safer subjects. But Elara saw one of Kale's officers lean in close and whisper something important to him. Kale's answer was short and dismissive, but she heard bits of the Thravian words. "Impossible? Can't be. Must look into." As the first day of the summit came to an end, the delegates got ready for the evening reception. This was a more casual event meant to help people get to know each other and relax. Elara's job would change from translator to general support staff. She would be available if needed, but she wouldn't have to be on the lookout all the time. She felt it, the prickling feeling that someone was watching her, while she was getting her things together. She raised her head. General Kale stood perfectly still across the great hall, where delegates and staff were moving around. His officers moved around him, getting ready to leave, but he didn't move, staring straight at her with a look that had nothing to do with diplomacy or military strategy. He looked at her like she was a puzzle that, if solved, would explain everything. He thought she was a miracle that he had stopped believing in. Like she was the most important person in a room full of people who could change the course of history. Elara's breath stopped. She should turn away, keep her distance, and remember all the reasons why this was dangerous, wrong, and could have terrible effects on the future of Earth. She instead kept her eyes on him. The great hall around them emptied. Delegates left for their rooms. The staff gathered the tools and locked up the area for the night. But neither of them moved, caught in a moment that felt like it had been stolen from time itself. Kale was the one who finally cut the link. His second-in-command spoke to him harshly and pointed to the exit, where their security detail was waiting. Kale replied with clear reluctance. His body language showed that he didn't want to do it, even though he followed the rules. But as he turned to leave, his red robes swirled around him and his officers formed a protective circle around him. He looked back one last time. And this time Elara saw something that made her knees weak. Desire. A pure, open desire that went beyond species, situation, and reason. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay and cross the distance between them, to ask questions that neither of them knew how to ask. Then he was gone, leaving Elara alone in the almost empty hall with a pounding heart and a head full of impossible truths. He and his group walked through the huge doors. She had been dreaming about him for 20 years. And somehow, even though it seemed impossible, he had been waiting for her too. Elara didn't remember much about the walk back to her hotel room. The first day of the summit was a historic one, and the streets of Geneva were full of lights and people celebrating. Every screen showed news reports that looked at every part of the event. Her face showed up briefly in some of the footage with the translator in the background who was not very noticeable. I wish they knew. Her room at the Diplomatic Corps Hotel was small but cozy. It was made to be functional, not luxurious. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it. For the first time, she let herself feel the full weight of everything that had happened. Her hands were shaking. No, her whole body was shaking and her muscles were shaking like they do after an earthquake. She slid down to the floor with her back against the door and let her feelings wash over her. Fear. Wonder. A lot of confusion. And underneath it all, there was a strange feeling of rightness that she couldn't explain or ignore. She had seen him. She had seen him in the flesh after 20 years of dreaming about him and telling herself it was all in her head and a childhood fantasy. Cale was a real person. The silver marks were real. The amber eyes that had watched her in her dreams were real and had seen her in real life. Director Harrison sent her a text message that said, "Great job today. You made a small mistake at the beginning, but your translations were perfect. Be ready for 0800 tomorrow. Day 2 will be even more intense." Perfect. It seems that she was still able to do her job well even though everything she thought she knew about the world fell apart. It seemed that people could compartmentalize better than she thought. Elara got up and went to her laptop. Her fingers were already typing before she even thought about it. She looked up every piece of information she could find about General Cale, even though she had already studied his file in great detail in preparation. General Cale from Thravia. Age: unknown but thought to be in the middle of the human life cycle. 20 years in the military. Rose through the ranks faster than anyone else because of smart tactical changes and complete loyalty to the Thravian Empire. Known for wanting to solve problems through diplomacy when possible, but not being merciful when diplomacy failed. Not married. No known personal relationships other than those with people in the military. That last piece of information made her chest feel like it was twisting. Not married. By myself. Even though he was powerful and respected because of his name. She looked through pictures of official portraits, battlefield holos, and diplomatic events. His face stayed calm and neutral in each one, giving nothing away. The ideal military leader, made of stone and discipline. Except that she had seen under that mask today. She had seen shock, awe, and something that looked a lot like loneliness break through his control. She thought of him as more than just a legend. She thought of him as a person who could be shaken, who could feel, and who could look at a woman like she was more important than wars and politics and space. What? The question kept coming back to her. Why would he act that way toward her? What did she mean to him? Elara opened a new search window and typed, "Dreams predicting future encounters." A scientific explanation. The results were disappointing, mostly because they were based on pseudoscience and wishful thinking. Legitimate scientific sources characterized prophetic dreams as manifestations of confirmation bias and false memory. They said that the brain made patterns and meaning out of random neural activity while we slept. Any predictions that seemed to come true were just a matter of chance, given the odds. But the fact that her dreams were so specific made it less likely that they were just a coincidence. She had seen exact details, like the exact pattern of his markings and the exact color of his eyes. These were things she couldn't have made up without knowing them first. She looked again. Thravian culture has prophetic dreams. This was more interesting. Thravian spiritual traditions, largely concealed from other species, seemingly encompassed profound convictions regarding the prophetic significance of specific dreams. Anthropological studies suggest that Thravians believed souls could connect across time and space while sleeping, forming links that went beyond the physical world. Some Thravian military customs used dreams to help them choose commanders. It was thought that warriors who dreamed about specific battles before they happened were chosen by fate to be leaders. The practice was very old, even before people could travel to space, and it still had cultural meaning in their modern military. Had Cale thought about her? Had he seen the same things and felt the same impossible recognition? Elara jumped when someone knocked softly on her door. Her heart raced right away. She looked at the security camera display and saw Director Harrison standing in the hallway with a serious look on his face. She unlocked the door. "Sir? We need to have a talk." Harrison came in without being asked, and instead of being friendly, he looked worried. "Shut the door." Elara did what she was told, but her anxiety went up. Did she make a huge mistake while translating? Did she do something to hurt the summit? Harrison crossed his arms and turned to look at her. "What happened today between you and General Cale?" The question hit me like a punch in the gut. I don't understand what you mean." "Don't lie to me, Elara. For 20 years I've been doing this job. I can tell when there's subtext in a room, and today there was enough to fill a library." Harrison's voice was strict but not mean. "The general couldn't take his eyes off you. And you were so distracted during the opening that you missed 3 whole minutes of what was going on." Elara was very embarrassed. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "I don't want to hear sorry. I want to know what's going on." Harrison's face softened a little. "This is more important than your job, Elara. The future of Earth is at stake. I need to know if you have a personal connection to the Thravian military leader." "Now." She almost couldn't resist the urge to tell Harrison everything. The dreams, the recognition, the strange sense of familiarity. But how could she do that? Even in her own mind it sounded crazy. If she said it out loud, people would think she was unstable, untrustworthy, or even compromised. She had a hard time finding words that didn't sound crazy. Never met him before. I swear. But today when I saw him I felt like I knew him. That's the best way I can explain it. Harrison looked closely at her face. How do you recognize? From research on culture? From intelligence briefings? No. From. She wasn't able to say it. Couldn't admit to having dreams that told the future. I don't know. It was just a gut feeling. A strong feeling of knowing. It threw me off but I got back on track. My translations were correct. They were, Harrison said. More than accurate, actually. You picked up on things that most translators would miss. He stopped for a moment as if he were having trouble with something. The Thravian delegation sent a message through official channels. They want you to be their main translator for the whole summit. Elara's breath stopped. They asked for me? General Kale asked for you. For me. Harrison's eyes got smaller. Which is very strange. Delegates don't usually pay attention to each translator. And they definitely don't ask them for things in person. Her thoughts raced. Kale wanted her to be there. Wanted her nearby. The effects were huge. Sir, I can handle this in a professional way. No matter what happens, I won't let it get in the way of my work or the interests of the Earth. I think you mean that. Harrison walked toward the door but then stopped. But Elara, be very careful. General Kale is more than just a military leader. He's one of the strongest beings in this part of space. If they wanted to, the Thravian Empire could easily destroy Earth. It could be a great chance or a terrible trap if you two are connected in some way. Elara felt the walls closing in on her as she stood in the middle of her small room after Harrison left. She went to the window and looked out at the skyline of Geneva. General Kale was in his quarters somewhere in this city. Did he have her on his mind? Was he just as confused and shaken as she was? A news alert buzzed on her phone. She almost didn't pay attention to it, but the headline caught her eye. The warrior who never loses, Thravian General Kale. The article was a profile piece that took advantage of the interest in the summit. It went over his military history, his reputation, and how he got to be in charge. But toward the end there was a quote from an interview that happened years ago. "General, do you believe in fate?" the interviewer had asked. Kale said, "I think some things are written in the stars before we are born to see them. I think the universe has patterns that we don't yet know about. I also think that some connections go beyond what can be explained or reasoned. We just have to believe they are there for a reason." Elara read the quote 3 times and each time her heart raced more. Those words didn't sound like they came from a military strategist. Someone who believed in something deeper, almost spiritual, said those things. Someone who might think that dreams can come true said those words. She opened her laptop again and started writing. This time it wasn't a report, it was a personal journal entry. She had to write down everything while it was still fresh in her mind so she could make sense of the impossible. I saw him on the first day. The person I saw in my dreams is real. General Kale of Thravia is his name, and he recognized me just like I recognized him. I don't know how or why, but I know for sure that this connection is real for both of us. What does it mean? Why would I dream about an alien for 20 years before meeting one of his kind? Why does he look at me like I'm the answer to something he's been looking for? I'll see him again tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be close enough to talk to him and maybe get answers to questions I don't even know how to ask yet. I'm scared. I'm so excited. I'm on the edge of something that will change everything, and I don't know if I should go forward or backward. But I don't think I ever really had a choice. I believe this was always going to happen. I believe we were always meant to meet. She saved the file and shut her laptop. Then she went to bed. She felt tired, but sleep seemed impossible. As she lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept coming back. Tomorrow she would be in the same room as the being who had haunted her dreams for 20 years. She might finally find out the truth tomorrow. If she had the courage to look for it. Morning came too soon and not soon enough. Elara had dozed off and on, and her sleep was broken up by strange dreams that were different from the vivid ones she had as a child. They were worried and confused. Her mind was trying to make sense of what had happened yesterday. She took extra care with her clothes, but then she felt stupid for doing so. She worked as a translator on the side. Her looks shouldn't matter. But she still chose her best business suit, made sure her hair looked perfect, and put on just a little makeup. A voice in her head told her to do it for him. You're doing this for him. She should have been embarrassed by the thought. It just felt right to her in a way she couldn't explain. The summit building was even more full of energy than the day before. Security had been stepped up after some small protests outside, but nothing major. Delegates came early, eager to continue the sensitive talks that would affect relations between stars for decades. Elara got to her translation booth 30 minutes before the scheduled start time. She needed to calm down before facing him again. She went over her notes, checked her gear, and tried to calm down the nervous energy that was running through her. She knew he was coming before she saw him. The sound quality in the great hall changed. Conversations got quieter and people moved more carefully. General Kale's presence changed the whole mood, like a storm system moving in. Elara turned her head up. He stood at the door with his group, wearing formal military clothes that somehow made him look even more powerful. His uniform was red and black, which made him look taller and bigger. The silver marks on his face caught the light coming through the hall's high windows in the morning. And his eyes found hers right away, as if he knew exactly where she would be. The effect was just as strong as it was yesterday. Her breath caught and she held on to the edge of her console. But this time, there was something different about the way he looked at her. Yesterday was full of shock and confusion. Today was a day of purpose. Kale walked toward his seat, but he got too close to her booth on the way. As he walked by, he almost stopped. He looked into her eyes for a long time and she saw a question there. A request. Then he moved on and took his place with the other delegates. The message was clear. They needed to talk. Somehow, in private, away from cameras, diplomatic rules, and the eyes of many civilizations. The morning session was about trade agreements and sharing resources, which are important but not as volatile as military talks. Elara translated with mechanical accuracy, and her training helped her do it while her mind raced with the implications of that short conversation. How could they talk to each other in private? There was security around each delegate. They had to stick to their schedules down to the minute. If a human translator talked to the Thravian general without permission, it would lead to an immediate investigation. But she was sure they would find a way. Logistics alone couldn't explain the strong pull between them. Around 10:30 a.m., one of Kale's officers asked for a short break to look over some technical information about mineral rights in areas where there was a disagreement. The request was granted and everyone got a break for 15 minutes. Elara stayed in her booth because she thought the break didn't apply to support staff. She was going over her notes on the translation when she felt that familiar feeling of being watched. She looked up. General Kale was standing right outside her booth. By yourself. Her heart stopped, then it started again with a painful thud. He doesn't belong here. Protocol said that delegates had to stay in certain areas during breaks. He should have his security detail with him. This was against a lot of diplomatic rules. But he was still here. Kale didn't say anything right away. He just stood there, looking at her through the clear wall of her booth with a look that was a mix of wonder and something like pain. Elara's hand moved to the booth's door release before she even thought about it. The door opened with a soft hiss. General Kale, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You shouldn't. I know. His voice was deeper in person, and it resonated in a way that made her chest vibrate. He spoke English, but his accent made the words sound strange. Protocol says you can't have contact without supervision. But I had to. He stopped talking, sounding unusually unsure. Elara could see things that the cameras hadn't picked up on this close, like the fine texture of his bronze skin and the way his silver markings looked like they had depth, almost like they were three-dimensional. In person he was too much, and his presence filled the small space. Elara said, You know me. No question. A statement of fact that can't be true. Yes. The word came out rough, like it had been ripped out of him. I've dreamed about you since I was a kid. Over and over, the same dreams. A woman with gray eyes and a quiet strength. Saying things I didn't understand but thought were beautiful anyway. Elara felt the confession like a wave. He had a dream about her. The connection was real and two-way. They had been seeing each other across impossible distances, and years before they should have been able to know each other existed. I dreamed about you too, she said, her voice shaking. Since I was 7 years old. Every little thing. Your marks, your eyes, and your presence. You were in my nightmares, but you never hurt me. You just sat there and watched like you were waiting for something. Waiting for you. Kale stepped closer, still keeping a respectful distance, but close enough that she could feel the heat coming off of him. In my culture, dreams like this are very important. Messages from fate, from powers we can't understand. But I never thought I would see you again. When my dreams started, people didn't know much about life outside of Earth. The chances of meeting you were astronomical. But here we are. Elara's hand shook. She put her hands together to hide it. How is this possible? How can two beings from different worlds dream about each other before their species even meet? I don't know. Kale's hand went up as if he wanted to touch her, but then it fell back to his side. But I will find answers. There are Thravian scholars who look into things like this. Old writings that talk about soul ties that last through space and time. I have already sent messages to our smartest advisors. Connections of the soul? The word made her shiver. The idea is hard to put into words. There is no equivalent in your language. Kale looked into her amber eyes. But it means two souls that are meant to be together. Links that are there before birth and stay there after death. Partnerships that change the course of worlds. Elara felt the weight of those words on her body. The fate of worlds. This wasn't just a personal thing, it was a big deal. I don't matter, she said. I'm only a translator. A normal person. Why would fate care about me? You are not normal. Kale's voice was strong and sure. I've seen your work and heard your translations. You know Thravian language and culture in a way that should be impossible for a human. You pick up on things that take our own people years to learn. That is not a coincidence. Before Elara could answer, she heard voices in the hallway. It was Kale's officers looking for him. His face grew hard with anger. I have to go. But Elara, hearing her name in his deep voice with that strange accent, made her knees weak. We will talk again. When we can find privacy, we do it right. There is too much to learn and time is valuable. Oh. Security keeps an eye on everything. He smiled a little, which was the first real smile she'd seen from him. It changed his face, making him look younger and less stressed. I am the head of the Thravian army. I can make chances happen when I need to. He was about to leave when he stopped at the door. Elara, you always talk to me in my dreams. I couldn't understand what you were saying, but your voice made me feel better. Hearing you translate today, hearing your voice speak my language, it felt like coming home after a long time away. He then left, moving back toward his group with the quick, controlled movements of a military leader. Elara was left holding on to the doorframe for support. She had talked to him. They had confirmed the truth that was impossible. The dreams were real, the connection was real, and the force that had brought them together had plans that neither of them fully understood yet. And he would find a way for them to talk again. The rest of the morning session went by in a blur. Elara translated without thinking, and her professionalism got her through even though she kept hearing every word of their short conversation in her head. After their conversation, she noticed that Kale was more involved in the discussions. His suggestions were more helpful and he was more willing to compromise. It was like talking to her had put his mind at ease, allowing him to fully concentrate on his work. Director Harrison came back to her booth during the lunch break. The Thravian delegation has asked you to join them for a cultural exchange session tonight. You don't have to, but it's a good idea. They want to talk about the problems with translation and the subtleties of language in a casual setting. Elara's heart rate went up. This was the chance Kale had promised to make. Of course. I'd be happy to take part. Harrison looked at her closely. This is good, Elara. Getting along with the Thravian delegation will make the summit a lot better. Just remember what I told you. Be careful. That night, Elara was in a small conference room in the Thravian delegation's secure area. The room had been changed to make it more comfortable for people of different species. The lighting could be changed to suit Thravian preferences, the furniture was the right size, and the air was changed a little to match the atmosphere on their home planet. There were 3 of Kale's officers there, as well as a cultural advisor. And Kale himself, dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him, but still clearly military in how he walked. The conversation started off formally, talking about real language problems that came up during translation. But over time the officers and advisor found reasons to leave, things to do, messages to send, and reports to file. Elara and Kale were alone in less than half an hour. The silence between them was thick with all the things they didn't say. Elara finally said, "Thank you for setting this up." It had to be done. Kale moved to sit across from her, and his big body fit into the chair with surprising ease. I have spent the day talking to our spiritual guides. They confirmed what I thought. Old texts talk about our connection. Soul bonds that connect people of different species and worlds, made by things we don't fully understand. Why was it made? That's not as clear. But the texts say that these kinds of bonds happen when things are changing a lot and the fate of civilizations is at stake. Kale's amber eyes were very bright. Elara, do you know what's going on at this summit? What are the real stakes? Earth's survival depends on making friends and showing that we are worth saving. More than that. The galaxy is breaking apart. Alliances that used to be strong are falling apart. There are new threats coming from outside of known space. What happens here in these talks will decide if species work together or go their separate ways and eventually die out. Kale bent forward. And somehow, you and I are supposed to be a part of that future. Elara felt the weight of it on her shoulders. I'm not a leader or a diplomat. I don't know how to change the politics of the galaxy. Me neither once. I was a soldier who did what I was told. Kale's face relaxed. But fate has a way of giving us parts we never thought we'd get. The question is if we have the guts to take them. What if I don't have the guts? Yes, you are. He was completely sure. I've dreamed about you for decades. I know who you are, even though I'm just now learning about your situation. You are strong enough to handle anything that comes your way. Elara's eyes filled with tears, not because she was sad, but because she felt so seen and known. What happens now? Now, we have to learn to trust this connection we have. We look into what it means and what it's trying to tell us. Kale's hand moved across the table with the palm up as if to give something. And we face whatever comes together. Elara looked at his hand. It was bigger than hers, with bronze skin that had faint scars from battles fought. It was strong enough to crush, but he offered it with complete gentleness. Taking it would mean accepting everything, including the fact that her life had changed forever and that she had a connection that couldn't be explained. She put her hand in his. When their skin touched, it felt like the world changed. Not in a physical way but in an energetic way, like two pieces of a huge puzzle fitting together. Elara felt a deep sense of rightness and warmth wash over her, so much so that it made her cry again. Kale carefully wrapped his fingers around hers, as if she were something valuable and delicate. His face showed amazement, relief, and something deeper, an understanding that went beyond just dreams. He said softly, I've been waiting for you my whole life. I won't let fear or circumstances keep us apart now that I've found you. No matter what problems come our way, we'll deal with them together. Elara nodded, but she couldn't say anything because she was too emotional. In just 2 days, she went from being a regular translator to being part of something huge and cosmic. It should have scared her. Instead, she felt more like herself than she ever had before when she held Kale's hand and felt the warmth of his touch and the strength of their connection. They would face whatever came next together. Just like fate, or the universe, or whatever force had been showing them each other in dreams for years, had always planned. Elara felt like she was living in two different worlds at the same time during the next few days of the summit. In one, she was still the professional translator, doing her job perfectly while the fate of Earth hung in the balance. In the other, she was finding a link that changed everything she thought she knew about the universe and her role in it. General Kale had set up a few more cultural exchange sessions that were carefully planned to avoid raising any suspicions while giving them valuable time together. They talked about everything at these meetings, not just their dreams. Their childhoods were very different from each other. Their hopes and fears. The strange paths that had brought them both to this point. Elara found out that Kale came from a military family and was the son of a decorated commander who had hoped he would follow in his father's footsteps. But the dreams always made him different. Kale had been haunted by visions of a gray-eyed human woman who didn't exist in any reality he could reach, even though other young Thravians were learning how to fight. During one evening session, Kale said, "My father thought I was weak." They sat together on the balcony of the Thravian quarters, and the lights of Geneva spread out below them like stars that had fallen. He thought the dreams were keeping me from my goal, but they made me stronger. They gave me something to fight for, a future I couldn't see but knew was out there. Did you ever think they weren't real? Elara asked, her voice low in the dark. Every day. Kale's hand found hers, and their fingers intertwined in a way that was becoming second nature. Especially after humans first met and I saw your kind for the first time. I looked through every database and every picture in the hopes of finding you. But you weren't there. I started to believe that fate was mean for showing me something I could never have. But here I am. Here you are. The lights of the city shone in his amber eyes. Now, everything I've fought for and built has a purpose beyond duty and honor. I'm fighting for the chance to have a future with you. Elara felt the weight of those words. Their relationship wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was happening at the same time as negotiations that would decide whether Earth would stay a free world or fall under the control of stronger species. Kale's support for humanity had grown noticeably stronger since their first meeting. His proposals in the summit sessions were more and more in line with Earth's interests. But that made things more difficult. People are noticing, Elara said in a low voice. Director Harrison said that your positions have changed. Other delegates are asking why. Let them ask. There was steel in Kale's voice under the warmth. My support for Earth is based on good strategic thinking. The galaxy needs what humanity has to offer. New ways of thinking, cultural diversity, and different points of view. Those facts are still true even though I'm personally invested. But what if they find out about us? They won't. Not until we are ready. Kale turned to look at her directly, and his face was serious. Elara, I need you to get this. Soul bonds are very important in Thravian culture. If my people find out about our connection, they will fully support it, even if it means crossing species lines. But your people, humans, believe different things. They might think of it as manipulation or giving in. He was correct. If the government of Earth found out that their translator had become very close to the alien general whose help they needed, they would go into a panic. They would think the worst, that she was being used or that she had weakened Earth's position in the negotiations. Elara said, so we keep it a secret, even though the words tasted bad. She had never been good at lying. For now. Until the end of the summit, when the treaties are signed. We can tell the truth on our own terms once we know that the future of Earth is safe. Kale's thumb moved in patterns on the back of her hand without her knowing it, and it felt very close. But Elara, you need to know that this connection between us won't go away when the summit ends. It will only get stronger. Are you ready for what that means? What does it mean? Her heart pounded against her ribs. It means that our lives will be linked. It means living in two worlds, two cultures, and dealing with very complicated politics. It means that people will look at you and put pressure on you, even if they don't understand. Kale stopped for a moment, and she saw a look of vulnerability on his face that she had never seen in public before. It means I'll be asking you to take chances, give up things, and believe in something that doesn't make sense. Elara thought about how quiet her life had been before the summit. She liked the routine, the anonymity, and the safety of being unremarkable. Amber eyes, silver markings, and a connection that went beyond everything she thought was possible had burned it all away. I'm scared, she said. Things are changing so quickly. I wasn't anyone a week ago. People say that I'm now part of a cosmic plan that has to do with the fate of civilizations. It's too much. I understand. Kale's free hand went up to her cheek, and even though he was very strong, his touch was soft. But you don't have to face it alone. We will face whatever comes together. Elara's heart started to race when she heard the seriousness in his voice and how sure he was. This legendary general, who was so powerful that he commanded respect from all kinds of species across the galaxy, was looking at her like she was the most important thing in the world. Like her fears were more important than wars or political moves. Together, she said again, making it a promise. The moment between them seemed to last forever, full of meaning and unspoken options. Kale's hand shook a little on her cheek, showing feelings that he usually kept hidden behind military discipline. He leaned in closer, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Their first kiss was hesitant and exploratory, as two people from different worlds tried to see if their connection could lead to physical closeness. Elara's breath caught when she felt the warmth of his lips, the softness of his touch, and the way his hand held her face like she was made of crystal. Then the uncertainty turned into surety. The kiss got deeper, and it confirmed everything they had been dancing around since they first recognized each other. This was real. This was correct. No matter what problems came up, this was worth it. Kale rested his forehead against hers after they finally pulled apart, both of them a little out of breath. This was a Thravian sign of deep trust and intimacy. He whispered, I've been waiting for this since I was 15. For you. For now. To be sure that I wasn't the only one who had to deal with something impossible. Elara held onto the fabric of his shirt and said, You're not alone. We're both stuck in something bigger than us. They stayed that way for a long time, wrapped up in each other's presence. The lights of the city below showed that their connection crossed species and went against all odds. But reality couldn't be kept at bay forever. During the second week, the summit reached its most important point, with talks getting more heated over the most controversial topics, such as military cooperation, borders, and the rights of newly discovered species like humans. The pressure grew every day, and Elara could see that it was getting to all the delegates. Kale in particular. He had to protect not only Thravian interests, but also the honor and future of his people. The Thravian Empire was strong, but they couldn't fight off the new threats coming from space on their own. They needed friends, but making friends meant giving up things that many Thravians saw as weak. During a very heated meeting about mutual defense pacts, one of the other Thravian officers openly disagreed with Kale's stance. General, your support for including humans in the defense network seems out of proportion to their military strength, Commander Vrax said, his tone carefully respectful but questioning. They don't have much experience fighting in deep space. What strategic value do they really bring? Everyone in the chamber turned to Kale, and it was quiet. This was the question that many delegations had been thinking but were too polite to say out loud. Elara's heart raced as she translated Vrax's words into English for the humans. She saw Secretary General Chen get tense because he knew that Earth's place at this table was being directly questioned. Kale stood up and everyone immediately paid attention. His voice had total authority when he spoke. Commander Vrax asks a good question that needs a full answer. Kale's amber eyes moved around the room, stopping for a moment on Elara before moving on. Compared to species that have been fighting in space for thousands of years, humans' military skills are very limited. By normal strategic math, they don't offer much tactical value right away. Elara's stomach dropped as she translated. Was he giving up on Earth's cause? Had their personal relationship kept her from seeing the truth about politics? Kale went on to say, however, firepower and fleet capacity are not the only things that can be used to measure strategic value. Humans have traits that our galaxy really needs, like being able to adapt, coming up with creative solutions to problems, and being able to change cultures and technologies quickly. In the 75 years since people learned how to use nuclear weapons, they have gone from flying in the atmosphere to exploring other planets. That level of progress has never been seen before in galactic history. He brought up holographic displays that showed how technology on Earth has changed over time, and the data was impossible to argue with. More importantly, people have survived and thrived even though they had few resources and were alone on one planet with no help from outside. Through innovation and working together, they've been able to deal with internal conflicts, problems with the environment, and threats to their existence. These are the traits that will be most important in the challenges that come from outside of known space. Kale's voice got sharper. We are up against an enemy we don't know and technology we've never seen before. In these situations, thinking outside the box is our best weapon. Humanity provides novel viewpoints unencumbered by our entrenched beliefs. That is strategic value that goes beyond just military metrics. He sat down and Elara heard everyone in the room let out a breath. Even Commander Vrax nodded even though he didn't want to. He couldn't argue with the logic. Chin, the Secretary General, leaned toward his microphone. General Kale, thank you for your clear defense of humanity's potential on behalf of Earth. We know that we can learn a lot from species that have been around longer, but we also want to share what makes us special. The session went on, but something had changed. Kale's passionate defense of humanity, backed up by solid logic and data, had made Earth's inclusion real in ways that simple goodwill never could. Later, during a short break, Director Harrison pulled Elara aside. He looked both relieved and confused. He asked, "Did you know Kale was going to say all that?" Elara said, "No, honestly. But he thinks it's true. You could tell by the way he spoke." "Yes, but why? What made him want to learn so much about human history and abilities?" Most delegates write basic position papers instead of in-depth strategic analyses. Harrison looked closely at her face. "Elara, is there something I should know about?" The question hung in the air between them, full of meaning. Elara fought the urge to tell Kale everything. The dreams, the connection, and the bond that made him want to help people as much as it made sense for him to do so. But telling the truth now could ruin everything. People who were against the summit would say that Earth had used her to control Kale. People would question the treaties that are being talked about. Earth's reputation would be hurt, maybe even killed. She said carefully, "General Kale is thorough. He wouldn't take a side without doing a lot of research to back it up. His defense of humanity was based on facts. It wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't the whole truth." Harrison seemed to notice that something was missing, but he didn't say anything. Just, "Be careful, Elara. It feels like we're dancing on the edge of a knife in this whole situation. Everything could fall apart if you make one wrong move." He was more right than he thought. The cultural exchange session that night had a different tone. Kale's officers were there, and their faces looked more guarded than usual. Elara felt a tension in the room that hadn't been there before. His first words confirmed what she had thought when the officers finally left and gave her and Kale their usual privacy. "We have a problem." Elara's heart sank. "What kind of issue?" "Some people in my delegation have started to question why I am giving more support to humanity." Commander Vrax's public challenge was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to his real worries. Kale looked worried. "They don't think there's a personal connection yet, but they do think I'm being affected by things other than strategic calculation." "Are they correct?" "Yes and no." Kale stood up and walked around the small room, full of energy. "My feelings for you have made me see how valuable people are, but they haven't changed my mind. What I said in the chamber today was true and made sense from a strategic point of view. People do have special value. The question is whether my co-workers will believe that my reasons are only work-related. What if they don't? Then they might try to take my place as head of the delegation. Or they might tell me to stay out of negotiations that have to do with people." Kale's jaw got tight. Either way, Earth's position would be ruined. My help has been very important in getting other delegations to agree. Without it, the opposition could stop people from joining the Defense Pact. Elara felt like the weight of it was crushing her. This beautiful, impossible bond between them could end up ruining Earth's chances of survival. The irony was very bitter. Maybe we should stop meeting, she said, even though the words felt like ripping her own heart out. If your delegation is keeping a closer eye on you and questioning your judgment. No. In 2 steps, Kale crossed over to her and took her hands in his. Hey Elara, listen to me. There is a reason for this bond between us. I don't think fate would show me your face for 20 years only to have our connection ruin everything we're trying to build. There has to be a way forward. Oh. If showing our connection would hurt the summit, and hiding it means putting your job at risk, then we need to change the story. Kale's face changed from one of emotional turmoil to one of calculation. We need to turn our connection into an asset instead of a liability. I don't get it. Kale pulled her toward the balcony where it was dark and private. In Thravian culture, soul bonds are seen as sacred gifts from the universe that show 2 people are meant to play important roles in shaping the future. They won't see our bond as a sign of weakness or manipulation if my people find out about it. They'll see it as proof that helping people is in line with the will of the universe. But my people will see it as a compromise or manipulation. Not if we put it in the right way. Not if we can show that the bond makes our judgment better instead of worse. Kale's grip on her hands got tighter. What if our connection is meant to be known, Elara? What if keeping it a secret is actually going against what fate wants? The thought was both scary and exciting. If they went public with their bond, they would be open to criticism, judgment, and possible backlash. But it would also mean being open about their relationship and saying that it is strong and real instead of something to be ashamed of. When? Elara asked, even though she was scared and her stomach was in knots. Very soon. But we need to wait for the right time, when the summit has made enough progress that the treaties won't fall apart, but before the other side can get stronger. Kale held her face in his hands, and his amber eyes were full of fire. Are you sure? We can't go back once we do this. Things will never be normal for you again. Elara thought about her dreams, which had been seeing this face, these eyes, and these markings for 20 years. The universe has been getting ready for this moment, this choice, this jump into an impossible future for 20 years. I was never meant to live a normal life, she said. I think I've always known that. The dreams were telling me to get ready for something amazing. Kale's smile lit up his face, changing how stern he usually looked. Then we do this together. We believe in the bond that brought us together, and we are ready for anything that comes our way. He kissed her then, hard and possessive, sealing their promise with a touch. Elara kissed him back, putting all of her fear, hope, and certainty into the kiss. They were going to make everything different. And the whole galaxy was about to find out that fate had plans that neither species could have guessed. The last week of the summit brought both more tension and cautious hope. Through careful negotiation and compromise, most of the big problems had been solved. The mutual defense agreement was almost done, but it still needed to be approved by all the delegations. They had written trade agreements. There were now clear lines between territories. It seemed almost certain that Earth would be part of the galactic community. But Elara knew that the hardest part was still to come. Kale had been working with his spiritual guides to get ready for their revelation, which is what Thravian custom says to do. In his culture, people would announce soul bonds in a formal ceremony with witnesses and ritual recognition. He wanted to honor those customs while also changing them to fit the unusual situation of a bond between 2 species. Kale said during one of their last private meetings, the ceremony will happen during the closing reception. It's the best place to do it because it's formal enough to show how important it is, but it's also celebratory enough to show how good it is. What will people say? Elara's hands shook as she held the ceremonial papers Kale had given her. They were old Thravian texts that talked about how to recognize a soul bond. People will have different opinions. Some people will see it as a historic event. Some people will question it, doubt it, or even condemn it. Kale's face was serious but determined. But what matters is the truth, that our bond is real, that it has made our judgment stronger instead of weaker, and that it gives us hope for a better understanding between our species. Chin, the Secretary General, had been quietly told about the planned announcement. He had been careful but not angry, knowing that there were both risks and benefits. Chin had said, if this works, it could be the start of a new kind of cooperation between species. But Elara, you know that everyone will be paying a lot of attention to you? You won't have any privacy. Billions of people will look closely at your life. She got it. and she had made her decision. The closing reception took place in the grand ballroom of the summit building, which was built to comfortably hold many different types of people. Representatives from all the civilizations that took part, as well as some members of the media and observers, were there. The mood was joyful because the summit had gone better than most people had hoped and real friendships had formed between species. Elara stood on the edge, wearing a formal dress that was respectful of both human and Thravian tastes. It was earth blue with silver embroidery that echoed the patterns of Kale's markings. Even though she tried to stay calm, her hands shook. General Kale stood across the room with his group, looking great in full ceremonial military dress. His red and black uniform seemed to shine in the ballroom's light, and the silver markings on his face looked almost like they were glowing. Their eyes met in the busy room, and Elara felt the familiar jolt of recognition. It was stronger than ever, as if their bond had grown stronger with every moment they spent together. Chin, the Secretary General, moved to the center platform and asked for everyone's attention. Everyone stopped talking when the delegates turned to him. "Friends and colleagues," Chin said, and his voice came through the high-tech sound system clearly. "We're here tonight to celebrate what we've done together. Treaties that will shape our future, partnerships that go beyond our differences, and hope for a galaxy that works together for a common goal." He stopped and looked more serious. "But we also come together to see something that has never happened before. An event that shows how deeply our species can be connected and how the universe sometimes makes connections that are hard to understand." There were whispers in the crowd. "This wasn't on the schedule." Chin pointed at Kale. "General Kale of Thravia has asked for permission to speak to this group about something that is important to him personally and culturally. Please listen with open minds and hearts." Kale stepped up onto the platform and everyone immediately respected and paid attention to him. Even species that had opposed his positions during negotiations were interested. The general didn't often talk about personal things. "Thanks, Secretary General." Kale's deep voice echoed in the room. "I am here to talk to you about something that is very important to my culture. Soul bonds. Connections that go beyond individual will, that connect two beings across time and space, that are there because of forces we don't fully understand but must respect." He stopped for a moment to let his words sink in with the delegates. "For most of my life I've had vivid dreams of a woman with gray eyes, quiet strength, and a voice that sounds like music. These dreams started long before people became part of the galactic community, before I could give them a logical reason for being. But they kept going, detailed and consistent, showing me a face I had never seen in real life." People gasped and whispered in the crowd. Elara saw some delegates leaning forward with interest and others looking at each other with doubt. "That woman and I met in person for the first time 3 weeks ago. Elara Bennett is the translator for the United Earth delegation." Kale's amber eyes locked onto hers from across the room, and she forgot to breathe. "And in that moment, I learned that she had been dreaming about me for just as long, seeing my face, my markings, and knowing who I was even though our species had never met." People in the chamber started talking in shock. Cameras turned to show Elara's face, sending her image to billions of people on many worlds. Kale raised his hand to ask for quiet. "I know this seems impossible to most people. But my spiritual guides have confirmed what Thravian wisdom has taught for thousands of years. There are soul bonds. They show up in dreams, in ways that don't make sense, and in connections that change the course of history." Commander Vrax stepped out of the Thravian delegation looking serious. For a terrible moment, Elara thought he would challenge Kale and call this news a lie or a trick. He knelt down instead. Vrax said in a formal tone, "General Kale speaks truth. I have talked to our smartest scholars. The signs described, dreams that last for years, instant recognition, and deep understanding despite differences in species, are exactly what ancient descriptions of soul bonds say. Thravian law and customs say that these kinds of bonds must be respected as sacred." One by one, the other Thravian officers also knelt, showing that they accepted and supported the ritual. Chin, the Secretary General, walked over to Kale's side. "I have looked at proof of these claims, such as dream journals kept by both sides for many years and testimony from family and co-workers. Even though the phenomenon doesn't fit with what scientists usually say, the fact that people have the same experiences over and over again is amazing. The delegation from Earth believes General Kale's revelation is real." Elara knew she was crying, but not because she was scared or ashamed. She was just so relieved. They were no longer hiding. The bond that had shaped both of their lives was being talked about openly and publicly as something strong and real. Kale stepped down from the platform and walked through the crowd with a single purpose. Delegates moved out of the way, making a clear path for him to Elara. He did a formal Thravian bow, which is a sign of deep respect that is usually only given to emperors or spiritual leaders. Elara Bennett, in front of people from many worlds, I claim you as soul bonded. Will you accept this bond and everything that comes with it? Thravian rituals used formal language, but Kale's voice shook with emotion as he said them. This wasn't just a ceremony, it was the most important question in his life. Elara's voice shook as she spoke, but her words were clear in the quiet room. I accept the bond. I accept you. I accept whatever fate has in store for us in the future. Kale's face changed into one of pure joy that made her heart ache. He held her hands in his, and as soon as their skin touched, she felt a surge of energy that seemed to ripple out from their hands, visible to everyone watching as a brief shimmer of light between their hands. People gasped in the room. Even delegates who were doubtful couldn't deny what they had just seen, something that went beyond normal physical interaction and spoke to forces that science couldn't yet explain. The bond knows itself, the Zalthirian ambassador said in a voice that was full of awe. I've read about things like this in old books, but I never thought I'd see one. Even Kale was surprised by what happened next. Delegates from different species started to come up to them, not with suspicion or judgment, but with congratulations and awe. The Morphean representatives, who can change shape and are sensitive to emotional energy, said they could feel the bond's resonance. The Zalthirians, who had spiritual traditions, gave blessings from the holy books of their homeworld. Even people who didn't believe in soul bonds could see the real emotion and deep connection that went beyond cultural and species boundaries. Director Harrison stood next to Elara, and his face was hard to read. Well, you really did make an impression. This will be in the news for months. I know, Elara said in a soft voice. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. I get why you didn't. And really, Harrison's serious face broke into a small smile. This might be the best thing that could have happened. You just showed that people and aliens can have deep personal relationships. That's a stronger case for working together than any treaty language. He was correct. Elara and Kale became living examples of what can happen when different species work together all night. Their story of two beings from different worlds who were shown each other in dreams by forces beyond understanding and found each other against all odds captured the imaginations of people all over the galaxy. But as the party went on, Kale took Elara to a quieter part of the room, away from the cameras and people. He asked softly, "How do you feel?" and put his hand on her cheek. Scared. Thankful. Too much. Elara leaned into his touch. But also yes. This seems right, Kale. Like we're finally being honest about who we are to each other. Kale said simply, we are soul bonded. Now the universe knows it and we can stop hiding what we've both felt since the beginning. What's next? Next we plan our future together. There will be problems, people who don't understand or agree, and things that aren't easy. Kale's amber eyes were full of determination. But we face them together just like fate wanted. Elara stood on her toes to kiss him, not caring who saw what the cameras were showing, or what the political implications were. This was real. This was their thing. And she was no longer scared of it. Kale smiled when they finally said goodbye, that rare life-changing smile that made him look younger and free of worries. He whispered into her hair, I've been waiting for this since I was 15. And it was worth every second of waiting. Elara put her arms around him and felt how real he was, no longer a dream figure but flesh and blood and warmth. So have I. I didn't know what I was waiting for until I saw you. They stood like that, holding each other, while a new chapter in the history of the galaxy began to unfold around them. A chapter that isn't just in treaties and political agreements, but also in the deep truth that some connections go beyond everything else, even species, logic, and probability. A chapter that began with two people recognizing each other from far away. And a chapter that was just starting. 3 months after the summit, Elara stood on the Starfire, the Thravian flagship's observation deck, and watched Earth slowly spin on the view screen. From this far away, her home planet looked impossibly beautiful. It was blue and green and wrapped in white clouds that swirled around it. It had no idea how close it had come to being taken over or destroyed. The treaties had been approved. The Galactic Defense Alliance now fully included Earth, along with all the rights and duties that came with it. Trade deals were already good for both people and their new partners. 3 months ago, the future seemed very uncertain. Now, it looks bright and full of possibilities. And Elara's life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. Are you still homesick? Kale's voice came from behind her, full of love and understanding. She turned to see him looking at her with those amber eyes that used to be in her dreams but were now a part of her daily life. He wore regular clothes instead of military ones because they were on their way to Thravia for Elara's first visit to his homeworld. A little, she said. But also excited. I never thought I'd get to see other worlds. I never thought I'd be living like this. Cale moved to stand next to her, and his hand found hers as if they had known each other for a long time. Are you having second thoughts about getting close to an alien general? Not ever. Elara held his hand tightly. I'm still getting used to all the attention. The interviews, the news coverage, and the people who want to study our bond like we're lab rats. For months, the news in the galaxy had been all about their soul bond. Scientists from different species had asked to study them because they were interested in how different species could connect with each other. Philosophers had written long essays about what this meant. Artists had made things that were based on their story. It was too much, intrusive, and sometimes tiring. But it was also very pretty. Messages came in from all over known space. People told their own stories of making unexpected connections, finding a place to belong in strange places, and hoping that different species could really understand each other. Cale said softly, I know it's hard. You gave up your privacy and anonymity for this bond. For us. I'd pick the same thing again. Elara turned to look at him. Cale, these last few months have been the best of my life, even with all the problems. Every day when I wake up, I know I'm exactly where I should be. That's worth any trouble it may cause. His face softened with so much love that it made her breath stop. Even now, after being together for months, the depth of his feelings for her could still blow her away. He pulled her into his arms and said, You are amazing. I've led armies, taken over worlds, and changed the politics of the galaxy. But loving you is the best thing I've ever done. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, until a soft chime told them someone was trying to reach them. Cale sighed and turned on the screen. Chin, the Secretary General, came in with a warm smile. Elara, General Cale. I hope I'm not getting in the way. No, not at all, Secretary General, Cale said formally, but he still had his arm around Elara's waist. What can we do to help you? Actually, I'm calling to ask for something. We're setting up a new diplomatic corps just for cross-species cultural exchange and building partnerships. We'd like you both to be founding advisors because of your unique points of view and experiences. Elara felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. This was the kind of work she had hoped would come out of their revelation, using their connection to make real, useful changes in how different species get along. She asked, what would that mean? Teaching diplomats how to be sensitive to other cultures. Making rules for negotiations between different species. Sharing what you've learned about how different species can talk to and connect with each other. Chin grinned. Elara, your bond has inspired a lot of people. Now we want to turn that inspiration into real programs that help everyone. Cale looked at her, and the question was clear in his eyes. What do you think? Elara remembered the dreams that scared her as a child. They made her feel like she was getting ready for something big, something that would matter. She thought about the last 3 months, when she had seen how their story had changed conversations all over the galaxy and made the idea of deep connections between species seem possible instead of impossible. We'd be honored, she said firmly. When do we get started? After you get back from Thravia. Take your time to get used to your bond and see both sides. Then we will start. Chen's face got more serious. There's one more thing. The threats we don't know about from outside our sector are getting worse. We might need your special point of view on how to make alliances strong enough to deal with them. When Chin hung up, Elara went back to the viewport and looked out at the stars that were scattered across the dark sky like diamonds on black velvet. It's bigger than us, isn't it? She said in a soft voice. This bond, what it stands for, it's part of something bigger. Yes. Cale came to the viewport with her. The old books say that soul bonds form when the universe needs certain connections to exist and things are changing a lot. I think this is the kind of time we're in. The threats coming from space that we don't know about will need everyone to work together in ways that have never been seen before in the galaxy. And how are we supposed to help with that? I think we're supposed to show what's possible. To show that there can be a connection between any two things like species, culture, or worldview. Cale's voice was sure because he had thought about it for a long time. Elara, our bond isn't just personal. It shows that the universe has patterns and goals that we can't see right now. Elara thought about how cosmic forces write stories across time and space, how two souls are shown each other in dreams years before they can meet, and how the unlikely chain of events that brought them together at the exact right time could matter most. Do you think there are other people? She asked out of the blue. Other soul bonds waiting to be found? People being shown faces in dreams and getting ready for meetings that haven't happened yet? Cale thought about this. Very likely. People have seen and acknowledged our bond now. That could help other people see and claim their own connections. The idea was lovely and a little too much to handle. What if they weren't one of a kind? What if there were other people in the galaxy who were dreaming of beings they hadn't met yet and feeling drawn to unlikely connections that would change the future? Then we need to find them, Elara said with more and more certainty. Help them understand what's going on and give them the strength to believe in bonds that don't make sense. Kale pulled her close and said, another reason for our work. Another way our bond is useful for something bigger than us. The starfire changed direction, and all of a sudden Thravia appeared in the viewport. It was a world of copper deserts and crystalline cities, with mountain ranges that touched the thin atmosphere and oceans that reflected 3 suns. Kale's home world, which will soon be partly hers as well. Are you nervous? Kale asked, noticing how tense she was. Scared, Elara said. What if your people don't want me? What if I can't get used to the way Thravian people live? What if? They will love you, Kale said softly. Because I love you. Our oldest laws say that our bond is sacred. Because you are everything brave and beautiful about reaching out to someone who is different from you. And what if they don't? Then we'll deal with that together, just like we've dealt with everything else. Kale turned her to face him, and his hands gently framed her face. Elara, I've spent my whole life doing what I thought was right, what was expected of me, and what was right. You are the first choice I've made with my heart. No matter what problems come up, I will never regret picking you. Elara's eyes filled with tears. Happy tears, tears of being overwhelmed, tears of being seen, known, and loved so completely. She whispered, I love you too. More than I can say. You were my nightmare and my comfort, my dream and my life. You're everything I didn't know I needed. They kissed then, deeply and possessively, as if to reaffirm their vows, both spoken and unspoken. When they finally said goodbye, both of them were smiling, even though Elara's cheeks were wet with tears. Are you ready to start our future? Kale asked. Elara looked out at Thravia, the alien world that would be her new home. Saw the stars beyond, which were scattered across the dark in patterns that could be random or have a purpose. She looked at Kale, whose face had haunted her dreams for 20 years and now brought her joy and purpose in her waking life. I've been ready since I was 7, she said. I just didn't know it yet. Elara thought about all the dreams that had brought her to this point as the starfire flew down toward Thravia, toward a future that neither of them could fully predict. All the time she woke up with her heart racing and saw a face she couldn't explain. For all those years she felt like she was waiting for something but didn't know what it was. The dreams had been a way to get ready. The universe showed her what was coming and gave her time to accept the impossible before it became real. And now, as they flew down to his homeworld, she was wrapped in Kale's arms and finally understood the truth that had been hidden in those visions all along. The stars themselves write some connections. Some bonds exist before birth and last after death. Some meetings have to happen, and the reasons for them are beyond logic or reason. She knew an alien general from childhood dreams because their souls had been reaching for each other across impossible distances, making a bridge that would one day change the galaxy. Their souls were connected. And their story, the story of 2 people from different worlds who met in dreams and then met again in real life, was just getting started. There was a reason why the universe brought them together. And together they would find out what that reason was. The end.